Coming up on 5 Minute News. Trump vows to keep talking as US judge sets hearing for Friday. Supreme Court reinstates regulation of firearms without serial numbers. And President Biden designates US national monument near Grand Canyon. It's Wednesday, August 9. I'm Anthony Davis. The federal judge presiding over Donald Trump's trial on charges of attempting to overturn the election has ordered her attorneys and federal prosecutors to appear in court on Friday for a hearing to help determine how evidence can be used and shared in the case. U.S. District Court Judge Tanya Chutkan set the hearing for Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern Time, shortly after Trump's attorneys and members of U.S. Special Counsel Jack Smith's office had clashed in a joint court over when to schedule the proceeding. Prosecutors had said they were available all week, while Trump's lawyers had asked for a postponement until early next week. Friday's hearing comes after Trump's defense team opposed a request from prosecutors for Chutkan to impose a protective order to ensure confidential evidence is not shared publicly by Trump, suggesting he could use the information to intimidate witnesses. Trump's attorneys claimed limits would infringe on his right to free speech, protected by the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. Trump is not expected to be present at the courtroom on Friday after Chutkan waived his appearance. Typically, defense lawyers do not oppose such protective orders because doing so can delay the government from producing the evidence it intends to use at a trial in a process known as discovery. Trump on Tuesday kept up his attacks on special counsel Jack Smith and vowed to keep talking about his criminal cases. In the early voting state of New Hampshire, Trump assailed Smith as a thug prosecutor and a deranged guy, just a week after being indicted on felony charges for his efforts to overturn the 2020 election. Trump, after his rally on Tuesday, made a post on his social media network attacking U.S. District Judge Tanya Chutkan. "I will talk about it. They're not taking away my First Amendment," Trump said, speaking to supporters during a rally at a high school in the southeastern New Hampshire town of Windham. Trump, who pleaded not guilty to the charges, repeated his lies about the election on Tuesday, despite the fact that numerous federal and local election officials of both parties, a long list of courts, top former campaign staffers, and even his attorney general have all said there was no evidence of the fraud he alleges. The Supreme Court is reinstating a regulation aimed at reining in the proliferation of ghost guns, firearms without serial numbers that have been turning up at crime scenes across the nation in increasing numbers. The court on Tuesday voted 5-4 to put a hold on a ruling from a federal judge in Texas that invalidated the Biden administration's regulation of ghost gun kits. The regulation will be in effect while the administration appeals the ruling to the Fifth U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals in New Orleans and potentially the Supreme Court. Chief Justice John Roberts and Justice Amy Coney Barrett joined with the court's 3 liberal members to form the majority. Justices Samuel Alito, Neil Gorsuch, Brett Kavanaugh and Clarence Thomas would have kept the regulation on hold during the appeals process. Neither side provided an explanation. The Justice Department has told the court that local law enforcement agencies seized more than 19,000 ghost guns at crime scenes in 2021, a more than tenfold increase in just 5 years. The new rule was issued last year and changed the definition of a firearm under federal law to include unfinished parts, like the frame of a handgun or the receiver of a long gun, so they can be tracked more easily. Those parts must be licensed and include serial numbers. Manufacturers must also run background checks before a sale, as they do with other commercially made firearms. The requirement applies regardless of how the firearm was made, meaning it includes ghost guns made from individual parts or kits, or by 3D printers. President Joe Biden designated a new national monument near the Grand Canyon on Tuesday. The move protects lands that are sacred to indigenous peoples and permanently bans new uranium mining claims in the area. It covers nearly 1 million acres. The president gave remarks at the historic Red Butte airfield in Arizona before signing the proclamation and visiting the Grand Canyon. Our nation's history is etched into our people and in our lands, Biden said. Today's action is going to protect and preserve that history along with these high plateaus and deep canyons. Tuesday's announcement is part of a trip that will include New Mexico and Utah, where Biden is making the case for how he's tackling the climate and economic challenges facing Americans in the West. In the Grand Canyon, tribal nations and conservationists have been calling for additional protections in the area for years. A recent statewide poll showed broad support for the proposal, though local ranchers who have worked the land for generations have concerns. Senior administration officials said that the National Monument designation upholds private property rights. It also does not affect existing uranium mining claims. Still, Interior Secretary Deb Haaland, the first Native American cabinet secretary, called Biden's move historic. 5 Minute News is an Evergreen podcast covering politics, inequality, health and climate, delivering independent, unbiased and essential world news daily.